Hello, John. Thank you for coming back to the channel. There's a lot to talk about
Really?
since the last time we met.
What, did anything happen?
Yeah. Yes, a lot has happened. But before we start, we are live streaming on YouTube and simulcasting on X Spaces. For the ones that would like to ask questions, please type them in the chat or ask for the mic on X Spaces. I will post the links in the chat for everyone that needs them. Also, within the description section of this video and all the videos I do with John, there are links that will take you to his website. You'll be able to sign up for the periodicals that he types up and also for signing up for a reading. And we'll talk about that later within the broadcast. But thank you for joining. Everybody, please click the links. Please share the links. And also click the like button so we can grow this show and get a larger audience. So thank you, John, again, and let's begin with the updates and what you think is going to be happening and your take on what has happened in the region.
Well, these 2 week cycles that we go through every other Sunday. Um, I was First thing I found out is well, there's a lot of things going on, of course, and I imagine that every 2 weeks when we come back and do this show, there's a whole bunch of new stuff happening, and it's just not going to stop. It's going to be raging through to mid-May. All of history changing, human civilization course changing events, the most significant April in human history, followed by possibly the most significant May in human history, for better and worse. This I'm just a few days away from sending my next Hogue prophecy report, and I call it um, uh, April or Apoca Apocalypse, you know, an apocalyptic April. Now, apocalypse means not just doom and gloom and end of the world and retribution and God sending people in the lake of fire, etc., etc. It literally means apocalypse is the Greek word for enlightenment. It's the Greek word for lifting the veil of illusions and BS and seeing what's truly there and truly divine in all things. And so it is the word from the ancient Greek word for enlightenment, the achieving or relaxing into the eternal potential you've always been, which sometimes takes an interesting, effortless effort of work that can, and it happens. Um, so in these cycles, uh, we basically in our last talk, um, we were kind of in the midst or starting. Let me check my board here. Uh, yeah, the last talk was on the 15th of April. Sorry, of March. And we were already in the midst of the retrograde, which would have then finished 5 days after the 15th of March. So our main subject was all the muddle that got the West and Trump, who changes the war plan every moment because there is no plan. It's all improvised. A really dumb way to go into a major war. And this war happened. The retrograde was 3 days old when on the 28th of February this war began. That was, if I look at my chart here, um, 1, 2, 3. That means 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, yesterday was the end of the first month of this war. And we've look what's happened. Uh, Now, what's happening now is that we are now going to enter April, and we're going to be under the influence of one of the most powerful stelliums of planets I've ever seen in my lifetime. Um, It is by the 15th and 16th of April, it will have in its gathering in Aries, God of War and New Beginnings, which the part that's not implied in New Beginnings is to have a beginning, you have to have endings. But it emphasizes it's sort of like what when you look at the 12 houses of the zodiac, Aries rules the first house, and therefore things that are coming to an end of a cycle of karma are in the 12th house. Now, what's very interesting about the situation is that Saturn, my little chart here, it's complicated. Saturn, um, well, what first happened is Neptune went into Aries, was the first planet to go into Aries, and it's going to be there a very long time. It is going to be with us. Uh, a new beginning for the spiritual, and a real ending in the longer term is until the middle, I think, of 2039. It's a very slow moving planet, and it's going to be in Pisces. I'm sorry, in Aries. It moved from its home ruler, Pisces, into Aries. So Neptune, the whole spiritual cycle of things, intuition, mass messaging, is undergoing a rebirth through Aries, because Aries is the first, going back again to the beginning of the 12 house cycle. What has joined it let's see, yeah, what has joined it? I'm going to move this over as it's getting finally dark up here in the Pacific Northwest. What has joined it is Saturn on the 15th of February. Uh, Also joined this mix with the retrograde. Saturn went into Aries. Now, that's also new beginnings, but it's also a challenge. Um, what it's not mentioning is the end of illusions. Certain illusions and way we do things, like go to war, certain patterns that, like how the American hegemon has gone to war, are now getting their comeuppance because it's an illusion, it's a limit. The United States is no longer the hegemonic unipolar power of the world. But our leadership and our culture in America is just wide eyes blind to that reality. And in a way, though they kind of subconsciously feel it, because 12th house is about hidden enemies, your mind, your motivations, the fact that you have all these things, that your buttons that get pushed, we don't really go in and meditate upon what is the source of those buttons being pushed. So a lot of things in the conscious world are being guided by the unconscious in a mass sense now. And basically sometimes empires end like Rome, slowly, takes a while, or they end suddenly like the Imperial German Empire or the Großdeutsches Reich. Or maybe now the Zionist Greater Israeli Reich dream has now come to its climax of illusion and its collapse, just as it's getting to the karmic echo of the last of basically this is a big karmic echo. An echo of karma is where it's something that happened before is repeated, often in reverse image. For instance, what could be more seemingly reversed imaged than the Greater German Reich um, under Hitler getting just one country away from taking the whole thing. It beaten France, England was hiding in its island and not able to get on the European continent. This was the moment that Hitler invaded and tried to take down the Big Apple, the Soviet Socialist republics. And now we have a similar thing, and I think more than ever, I think Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu is literally a karmic echo, performing in a reverse image, being a Jewish Hitler. Um, the same things that Hitler did. He's mad like a fox, just like Hitler was, but also a bit certifiable like Hitler was. And he has done outrageous things that only crazy people do. and the same people they're fighting are caught off guard. Uh, but it, and so he's managed to, up to this point, up until this war started, he had managed to decapitate the leadership of the Hezbollah, um, take Syria down so that he could cut the communication and logistic lines to Iran, who was financing the resistance of southern Lebanese Shia, who are under the political and military protection of of um, of Hezbollah. I think it's Party of God or House of God. I'm not sure about that. Um, and we, in this same area, we have another Holocaust of Semites going on, just like happened in the 1940s. It's been happening since 2023, when a similar karmic echo to the Warsaw Ghetto Rebellion of 1943, where the Jews, 300,000 Jews that were walled into an open air city concentration camp, not too unlike the Gaza Strip, where Semites, other Semites, equal Semites to the Jews, Palestinian Arab Semites, also born from the seed of Abraham, were put in an open air prison for decades where they couldn't leave. Their food was even limited for decades. And when you treat human beings so viciously and take their freedom and their humanity away, is it not surprising that when they break out of the prison, they massacre their masters and their children and their people? I mean, this is what happened on the 7th of October 2023. It was a prison riot from people who've been treated like beasts, so they responded like beasts. You would respond like beasts, just as they did. You would have killed your prison keepers, just like the Jews did in the Warsaw Ghetto, and fought them like tigers, killed a lot of Nazis. This is what happens. So, but this was used as an excuse to eradicate the Palestinian people, which is happening now. Over a million. I say again, just remember, I sometimes have to repeat myself a lot because the doom of human beings, or as Merlin said in Excalibur, the movie, for it is the doom of men that they forget. So, unfortunately, in my field, I hate reminding people all the time about things, but I need to because talk about the doom of forgetfulness. We are in a dark age of attention deficit disorder as becoming a natural state of human beings. They don't even remember what happened yesterday. It's like, so I'm constantly having to point out, look, I've said these very accurate forecasts now since 1987. And I'm having to bring up a lot of these things because I literally saw this coming for over 4 decades ago, and I've been writing and evolving my insights into it. Now here it is. Similarly, another one that's coming up that I've been dealing with since 2007 is Nostradamus's third Antichrist is looking more and more like he might be the Saudi um, de facto king of Saudi Arabia, because I think his father, Solomon, is Mohammed bin Salman, is the son. That means Mohammed, son of Salman in Arabic, is now the de facto king of Saudi Arabia. And now he's about to declare war on Iran. And Iran may do to him what was done to the former Ayatollah about a month ago, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, uh, who's now been replaced by Muqtada Khamenei, who is a hardliner. I mean, one of the dumbest things you can do what happened is with this decapitation, this is a Keystone Cops stupid stuff. The Americans wiped out all the moderates. you know, Khamenei was a moderate. He's the one that made the fatwa, the law that dissuaded Iranians from ever building not only atomic bombs, but when the CIA was giving Saddam Hussein all the means and telemetry of satellites to gas 300,000 Iranians in the Iraq-Iran war, 1980 to 1988. Um, he the Iranian soldiers were saying to the Ayatollah, which was Khomeini, the first supreme leader, saying, we must also build these gas weapons of mass destruction and fire them on our invaders. And he said, no, that is haram. That is that is un-Islamic. That is a blasphemy. The Islam tries, unless it's Wahhabist Islam, which is the source of Al Qaeda and ISIS and all of that, is Sunni majority extremists of the Salafist movements in Sunnah. They take the five virtues of being a Muslim, and one of those virtues is if there's a war, a jihad, a religious war, or any war, you don't slaughter civilians. You don't harm women and children, and you only fight and kill the combatants. Wahhabi believers don't believe that. That's why 9/11 happened and 3,000 Americans were slaughtered by Al Qaeda, which is a Sunni. I got to clear the air about this one thing. It's one of the biggest BSs that are out there. This whole drum of Iran is the worst terrorist nation in history, state-sanctioned terrorism. Can any of you name what Iran did to get this distinction? I can tell you very clearly that Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda, who are not Shia, who are Sunni, the Sunni majority, which is, the Shia are only about 260 million people out of 2 billion believers of Islam. So it's a sizable for its sake, but the vast majority and almost all the terror that has happened in the world, documented in the world, has not been from the Shias. It has been because the Shias are very slow to react and wage jihad. They're a lot like the Russians in that regard. They are slow to harness, but once you torture them enough, like we've been torturing the Iranians for decades, trying to destroy their assassinating people, trying to incite through terrorism, popular riots. It's all failed. But what we have done by killing the elderly Ayatollah Supreme Leader Khamenei, an 86-year-old man, I hear he was dying from cancer. What they did is by the first bombs the Israelis landed on his family compound, and they killed some top leaders, but they also killed children and Khamenei's wife, his son-in-law, and a little child, a girl child that was an infant. And this is talk about haram. This is terrible. So, have you noticed how this war, those of you who've been watching it, hopefully watching it in alternative media, because if you're just, well, you wouldn't be here listening to me if you didn't watch a little alternative media rather than rely completely on great specialists of military buffoonery like General Keith Kellogg, the old frosted flake, uh, and some of these other people on Fox and CNN and MSNBC and the legacy networks are really they're just propaganda organs. That is why they're losing their audiences, which are flocking to where I am also a member of the alternative media. So is Paul. And and so I just highly recommend that you don't believe anything I'm saying, but test it with you looking at things, taking note of what people in the alternative media are saying and how accurate they are. All of my sources are from the alternative media, and it's one thing that helps me vibe out who's on the right track and who isn't. Like one very interesting thing I felt, because this is kind of how I do it. I read the world, and then if someone's saying a certain thing and I just, no, that's not going anywhere. I don't know why it isn't, but usually 80%, 90% of the time isn't going anywhere. But when something kind of goes ding inside me when somebody says something and it's like, yeah, it's almost like an invisible voice, it's a small voice saying, that has legs, that's going to happen. And it's usually 80 to 90% the chance is that it happens. So Larry Johnson, former CIA station chief, one of my best sources for many years. Um, see his website Sonar 21. Take a read of his Substack. So you have to say Larry C. Johnson because everybody gets him mistaken for the African American basketball superstar. So he makes sure he has a C there. And otherwise, you're going to get into a lot of wonderful stuff about basketball. But you just read him. He's really good. He is one of my best sources, and he came up with a very interesting concept, which really rang true for me is happening. We're just well, I was just talking to Paul before the show. Paul thought maybe the boots on the ground, the raids either on those islands in the shipping lanes of the Persian Gulf, inside the Persian Gulf, might be targets for the Marines to land and take, like island hopping in World War II. I've actually been writing about those potentials all the way back. Oh, and all the way back in June 30th, I published it, June 30th, Nostradamus, The War with Iran, my first edition of it, in June 30th, 2009. So, and I have since did a second edition in 2013, October, and I was going to do a third, but then things just started happening. So I rather directed all that energy into my Hogue prophecy reports and my shows like I'm doing here today. But this issue of Iran has been in my life for a long time. And again, it's really something to see it happening. But an important side that rings true is, well, first off, I think the boots on the ground are going to come much later than most people in the mainstream news are saying. It's not going to be uh, imminent coming. It's going to be uh, see the MEU, the Marine Expeditionary Unit, which is a flat top helicopter vertical lift aircraft carrier with a LST, big ship LST that can move out whole large, you know, armored uh, uh, boats that can land on amphibiously, and surprisingly few destroyers guarding it, like two. I'm really surprised. I remember when I started writing about these writing, and I'm also going to publish some of what I wrote about the island attacks, the boots on the ground stuff that I was already writing about because of some leads of Nostradamus seemed like he was talking about it. Because he names the Strait of Hormuz by its 16th century name, Carmania. And Carmania specifically is the side of the Strait of Hormuz that the Iranians own. It's their country. The other side is Oman and UAE. So the Iranians don't have both sides of the strait. But so he's already talking about the coast area, Bandar Abbas and all that area, with the mountainous, cliff-like mountains that can be a lot like Suribachi on Iwo Jima, all drilled in, the caves, they have guns. It's only 20 to 21 miles wide, the Strait of Hormuz, in its narrowest part, which is right at the tip of that horn-like land that you see where it goes around like this. And so the ships they come up through here, and then all of this is Iran looking down at them, and they could sink ships with 155 howitzers. I mean, that's how close all the shipping is. So, if you wanted to see a replay of the Charge of the Light Brigade on water, if these mews want to rush through there, damn the torpedoes full speed ahead, um, like Farragut in the Civil War, they're they're going to get sunk. And if they get sunk in the two lanes, because there's only two lanes that are deep enough for all those ships to go. The destroyers could probably go into shallower water, but it's a very shallow water there. A lot of it's only 50 feet deep. And except for that one channel, which has been dredged through that, so that it's deep enough for tankers, because when tankers are full, they're low to the water with all that oil, and uh, and so um, as they make their charge through there, they could very well leave some major ships plugging the only navigatable water, and by their own hubris of charging in there, end up closing the Strait of Hormuz with big warships that need to be detonated and blasted apart to build a new area. This will take a long time. So, here we are to save and open the Persian Gulf, which Nostradamus in his prophecies called the Gulf of Arabia. That's what they also called it in the mid 1600s. Um, the very act of it's almost like this is a new version of we had to destroy that village to save it. From the Vietnam Wars, which evolved later in our American imperial hubris, to we had to destroy that nation of Libya to save it. And now we might have our guys shrugging, the admirals shrugging, when some of our ships are sunk right in the main shipping line. We might say, well, we had to destroy the Persian Gulf to liberate it. And here we are with it plugged up. A total, if you count the pipelines out of Oman taking UAE oil into the Arabian Sea, and in the Red Sea, the Saudis have a pipeline. So that's another 12% that's not usually put in the 20% margin when people say, oh, 20% goes through the Persian Gulf. But yeah, add the other 12% and you've got 32% of the oil, the gas, the urea for and potash and stuff for creating fertilizers, which is going to be down a third, which means, in the northern hemisphere, they will plant their fertilizer, but by harvest, and especially by next year, we're going to have many areas in food crisis. Now, some of the richer countries will probably survive it, although we're probably all going to get a lot thinner because food, if you think it's expensive now, wait till you see what's going to be next year, because of this shortage of fertilizer. And then what will happen in the seeding of things in 2007, these famines will deepen. And you got to remember, it's one of the basic rules of history. No matter how civilized you try to keep law and order and keep everybody on the same general page to function, you just have to remember two important things that happened. One that was in 2010, and another that was in 1788. Exactly uh, nearly 1 year and 1 day before the French Revolution, after which the French Revolution happened, was the day called the Great Whirlwind. I stumbled upon it in French journals for that period, and the whirlwind was in the journals of July, 1788, July 13th. Lucky number. And it was a great wall of tornadoes, like the Midwest. It was very rare for France. And it came from the southwest all the way across all the farmlands of central France, all the way north to Lille and nearly to the borders of northern France. And it was a lot of crops. But of course, people had the crops from the year before, so nobody was too concerned. But of course, what then happens in the following year, after the harvests of October, November in the Northern Hemisphere, September, October, November, food hiked up its prices because there was a shortage of everything, especially the staple of bread in France. And I mean, Napoleon, one of the closest times Napoleon, in the middle of his peak of his empire, almost got booted out of France was when he, I thought, did the right thing because I don't do white bread or white rice. He wanted everybody to eat bread, French bread, that was brown bread because it was healthier for you. And the response was he had to dump that idea within a week because literally people were ready to throw him out of office. The Emperor Napoleon the First. He okay, white bread, red bread, white bread is fine. And so this thing that happened, the whirlwind, which by the way, the term is trombe, and Nostradamus uses it in his description of the French Revolution, which he also dated for around 1792. And it was literally 1792, written 200 and plus years before in the mid 1550s. So his predictions about the French Revolution are remarkably accurate. Um, it's really hard to disparage those because it's right out there. And so he called the French Revolution the whirlwind. And there was literally a whirlwind which triggered it a year later, plus 1 day, uh, because it was bread crisis and food crisis that moved all of those citizens of France to arm up and storm the Bastille and start the French Revolution. It was because they were hungry. It's because the food was, if there was food, it was impossible to buy. And so that happened then. Now, a little more recently in our recent history, when global warming was lighting off 500 megafires across European Russia. It was like smoke in the air all through European Russia. European Russia is 1/3 of Europe, by the way. So it was big, and it was burning all the grain to the extent that I think a fifth of the grain had been consumed by the fires of that summer. The fires were triggered as a high pressure dome that was reacting to an absolutely biblical monsoonal flood that literally put 2/3 of Pakistan underwater for months. And so, here's where climate disruptions have an impact on Pakistan, uh, that upended Pakistan, but more so what happened with the Russians. They had to not, they could not export their grain that year, being like the number one exporter of grain. Because of the losing a fifth of it, they literally had to only sell it to Russians, especially to the livestock industries of Russia, or all the animals would have starved. All the cows, the chickens, all the livestock farms would have gone belly up. And so, what the people of North Africa and Western Asia had to do is seek out another big grain maker, the United States. But the Russians used to give it a very cheap and affordable price to the Arabs and the North Africans. The Americans did not. So they were compelled, all these dictatorships and stuff, to in the Arab world, to buy and purchase the high-priced American grain to feed their people. And what happened was it was too pricey. And there again, just like the French Revolution, what happened in February of 2011? The Arab Spring. A revolutions erupted across North Africa and Western Asia. I don't call it the Middle East anymore because that's a colonialist label of it. The accurate term is not Middle East because it's neither middle or east. It's Western Asia. So I no longer use Middle East anymore. If any of you are starting to wonder why I say Western Asia so much, that's a colonial term, and we are seeing the end of 500 years of colonial influence of the West as I speak. With a whole new world that's coming, hopefully will not be blown up in some last minute panic of those who are never lost a war and for 500 years or lost hegemony for 500 years, and it's so inbred into their DNA that they may not conceive of losing, and launch nukes to make sure in the end they don't lose, or at least they're still standing, even if it's a much lessened world. Well, we have bigger sticks to hit you with than the other people. And that's a real visceral, unconscious thing that's looming in a lot of what's going on right now. Because especially so um, famine, high prices for commodities, especially food, equals rebellions and revolutions and civil wars. I mean, one of the worst civil wars in history was the result of the revolutions that spread across Western Asia. It became the Syrian Civil War, which drug on, killed 600,000 people, just like the American Civil War did, only much longer, more devastation. And then Syria was never, the Americans then occupied the wheat fields and the oil fields of Syria, denying the Syrian people their needs and money to rebuild their cities. We did that. We're the bad guys. We did that. And and perpetuated the civil war, which then evolved into the Islamic State and Daesh, or what we call ISIS, which the Shia, because it's a Sunni totalitarian fundamentalist Islamo-fascist movement, uh, and they considered they were going to come into Iraq and kill all the two-thirds of Iraq who were Shia, which they consider apostates, that equal to Jews and Christians, to be annihilated. Very, very quirky Wahhabist way of looking at Islam, which Assalam means, the root word of Islam means to surrender, to submit to God. And this is this is like either you convert or I cut off your head with my scimitar kind of business, which is not very loving, kind, or it's fear-based, and nothing worse than what ISIS was, the worst part of that. And we helped them. In fact, we funded them. It's amazing now that ISIS is now an ally. They finally, for the way we were weakening the Assyrians, the Syrian nation collapsed. It was another nation that we had to destroy to save. And what did we put in its place? One of the surviving commanders and leaders of ISIS and Al Qaeda. First, he was with Al Qaeda, then he evolved to even a darker Wahhabist cult of ISIS. That Al Jilani fellow is a head chopper. He used to cut people's heads off on camera, and here's Trump. Oh, he's a kind of strong man, shaking his hand and all that. This man's maybe in a nice suit, but and trimmed his beard a bit, but he's a monster and a candidate for one of Nostradamus's third Antichrist prophecies, which now I double back now to um, um, what's his name? The Mohammed bin Salman. I had all the candidates of the Antichrist wanting me to mention them, but yeah, because I've been on their trail since 1983, and I think I finally found, just when I thought it was all over, just when the Caliph of ISIS, I thought, well, al-Baghdadi, when he was destroyed, I thought, well, maybe that's the end. Maybe we dodged the bullet of this famous Nostradamus set of prophecies, and it's all over. And then not long after that, with the Yemeni war that Saudi Arabia tried to win in starting in 2015, and with this hot-headed new crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman. Um, then when people started to call him MBS, because I don't know, Americans just can't, the words were too big in Arabic. So even journalists who should be semi-literate at least, um, they all started calling him MBS, which is unusual. And the unusual is always a good thing to search for clues with Nostradamus. I mean, there for a long time, I thought it was Richard Nixon he was talking about in my first complete prophecies of Nostradamus, which I wrote in the mid 90s and published in 1997 with Element Books, 1,000-page book, the biggest interpretation of Nostradamus's prophecies thus far published. I'm going to transcend that, but in my next thing. But anyway, you know, there's just something very interesting about how, just when I thought it was over, here comes MBS. Now, Nostradamus called the first Antichrist Paul Ne Laurent, or Paul Ne Laurent. It's an anagram. It means if you modernize the ROY for the old spelling of Wa, king, it's Napoleon Wa, King Napoleon, Napoleon the king. Napoleone Buonaparte was how he was born into the life in his bilinguals with a very thick Italian accent, and also being from Corsica, which was part of Genoa, was a holding of Genoa that the French took before the revolution. Bourbon France took it in as a winning for some wars or something. Europe's always at war. And so it even's got the phonetics correct. Buonaparte. He then, when he went to Brienne and became a student, he became Frenchified. He became a Francophile and started to speak like a normal Frenchman. But he always had a little bit of a Corsican accent, which only in War and Peace, the Russian version that was done in the 1960s, did the Napoleon in that speak like a Corsican French. He's like that. So, he goes, this is not the French do, especially in Paris. No, so the so he he's the first Antichrist. The second, well, this one's easy. AI Gothic S with a little horizontal line stroke through it. ER. Hister. Hister. Well, by the way, Hister, there's 5 references to it. All of them have a very modern twist to them. In fact, his symbol was the crooked cross, the hooker by crook cross, i.e., the swastika. Hister was born in the center of Middle Europe. Yes, he was born in Austria. And he was raised on the banks of the Danube River, and that's where Nostradamus gave him that older name for it, the Easter or Hister, with the H usually silent, but he spelled it out. Now, a lot of times it comes up as Ister, I-S-T-E-R, in a lot of his quatrains. But when he uses Hister with the Gothic 5 times, he's talking about Malta and Barb for Barbarossa and the invasion of Soviet Union. All these things start coming out, and even and he called him the captain of Greater Germany. Greater Germany is what Hitler called officially his Third Reich, der Großdeutsches Reich, the Greater German Reich. Großdeutsches. And he talks about this captain of the Crooked Cross who would break a lot of agreements and treaties, and a lot of them hit right on the mark of like the creation of the tripartite treaty, the Axis. The one of the treaties he broke was the treaties of Versailles. He broke them, and that is also mentioned. But the fall of France, um, and what's also very interesting is the final one he said would be broken in 45. He just wouldn't say the first two digits. He often doesn't do that. You have to find the century. So he said, so he had all these things being broken, and 45 was the last one, and it was Quatrain 45 in Century Volume 5. Sometimes you got to check these things out. Where he's talking about there would be a great empire would fall through Le Sylvain, the Sylvain d'Ardennes, the Ardennes forest. Uh, Two empires fell. In 1940, the French Empire and France fell to the Nazis invading through the Ardennes forest. And then Hitler tried to repeat that in the end of 44 into 1945. He tried to repeat that lucky stroke in desperation, which we all now know as the famous Battle of the Bulge, where he tried to go through the forest again, surprise the Allies, and then try to divide the British forces from the American forces by taking Antwerp. But he ran out of gas about a third of the way through, and then it ended up being this bloody mess that a month or two later it ended, and all the Bulge was taken back by the Allies. And what it did was it erased his strategic reserves. Thank goodness. Because if he didn't do that, he would have had, he might have made the conventional war in Europe last into September of 45. And if that had happened, it wouldn't have been Hiroshima and Nagasaki that would have been test bombed by atomic bombs. It would have been cities in Germany that were still standing in ruins mostly, but standing better than most of the Japanese cities, which were burned out. And Hiroshima and Nagasaki were saved primarily so that they could be tested with the first uranium and plutonium bombs dropped on defensive civilians, killing initially 370,000 of them within 3 days of each other. So it was the anyway, Nagasaki is the first week of August 1945, and it was specifically done because they could have ended the war in May of 45, also in the Japanese front. They were ready to surrender, but the Americans held off on doing that until they wanted to have the atomic bombs to show off to when Truman took over from Roosevelt. He wanted to show those off. I've said this before, but you know, this is our kind of shady, shadowy life, the legacy of America, and a lot of this we're coming to a head. It may very well be that we have to see a hegemon lose, completely lose, be utterly defeated to save the nation that got addicted to war and war industries. That, this nation has been on a very terrible trajectory since the end of World War II, when it became, by the time Eisenhower was warning in his final speech while he's leaving the presidency in March, I think, of 1961, he coined the phrase, the undue influence of the military-industrial complex, was a threat to the democracy. Well, it is. We were losing our democracy. I think we basically lost it. We have a Congress that no longer follows the rules of Constitution law. We have a president who's going senile very fast, who has openly said, I hear him say it with my own ears. He said, When they said, "Well, why you're not following any laws?" Like all this stuff that he's done to go to war with Iran, it's just he's just doing it, and Congress is just like cows watching, going, "Where's that Israeli money I get every month?" Um, there's no law. We are now lawless. There's nothing that we're doing in the last since a while now that has gone through the process of legal passage through constitutional law. So we are a lawless country. We are we are now having our government occupied, paid for, and taken over by a foreign nation. And now, as I've said over the decades, here comes Israel's big dumb friend, this great big giant of a hegemon who kind of goes, "Duh, what do you want me to destroy now? Duh." And that's us, And so Zionist Israel, which wouldn't survive a moment without having its big dumb brothers. Okay, okay, Israel. Who does I stomp on now? You know, it's just like, and so now it's come to the same echo of the final big apple for Hitler was the Soviet Union. He dared to gamble one more time. In fact, there's a statement that Hitler famously said that I'm hearing Netanyahu and people in the White House using. I don't even, they're just doing it by accident, but it's quite a karmic echo. The famous statement Hitler said. I mean, at least I'll tell you this, Hitler understood the gamble. He made clear that if we don't defeat the Soviet Union, this is a life and death struggle for the Soviet Union and us. And if we don't win, if we don't win quick, all of us are going to be dead and Germany's going to be ruins. He said that to his generals before he made the pact with the Soviet Union, so that he could buy time, take Poland, take out France, isolate Britain, and then come back when he was at his prime and his army was at its most powerful strength and nearly take the Soviet Union. But he didn't, and he was utterly destroyed. And his prophecy, his alternative prophecy happened. But at the beginning of Operation Barbarossa, means Redbeard, where he unleashed the greatest offensive in history, up to this point, in numbers, in geography, he he said, "It's simple, gentlemen. All you have to do with the Soviet Union is kick the door down, and the whole rotten edifice will fall down." And that's why he predicted, because they were a little surprised. Here's the biggest country in the world with 280 million people. And 88 million Germans, men, women, and children, are going to go to war with a country that's 280 million people, which has 11 time zones. Germany maybe only had one, I think, in those days. And he basically, yes, if we win fast and swift, we have to do it fast or swift, or we're done. Uh, Before they are able to galvanize their great resources and numbers to overwhelm us. Like, I mean, the analogy one of the German generals said, it was Hitler was wanting, like Hitler was this, the Germans were this big gray powerful elephant that was battling a sea of red ants on the ground, and it's stomping and stomping, and it's killing millions of those red ants. But the red ants slowly are getting all over him, getting into his eyes, getting down his throat, and eventually the red ants destroyed the giant elephant at a high cost. It's an interesting and very close to the fact analogy of what happened to Hitler and the Third Reich because of this. So I'm hearing it again. I'm hearing people even today saying, "Oh, Iran, just kick the door down and it'll all fall down. Just get a few American boots on the ground and we can just take it all down." Well, you are following the path and guided not by your own president, but by Bibi Netanyahu, the closest karmic echo to Adolf Hitler. Reversed image. He's Jewish. He's a Zionist. Zionism is equal to National Socialism. They have very similar beliefs. In my articles, I've quoted all the founders of the Zionist movement, and a lot of them are even praising Hitler, like Rabatinsky, who was the Russian Jewish mentor for the Likudniks, which eventually became the hard right Zionists that are currently running the country down. And he said, although Adolf Hitler is odious to all of us Jews, he's saying, he did have some great ideas about how to wage genocide. And so he did. And so there's this weird, evil kind of connection that Zionist has to the very same evil people that nearly killed the Jewish people in the last Holocaust are now inflicting it on other fellow Semites, the Palestinians. And this thing could go so the Soviet Union for Hitler, Iran is the big apple, the center, the big massive country, this huge country the size of West Europe that has I've flown over. It's all mountainous, and where it's not mountainous, it's deserts. And the mountains are like it would be the if you've ever been hiking in the Sierra Nevada, imagine, which is usually 12, 13 up to 14,000 feet. Imagine flying over 7 mountain ranges. You can see them one after the other, after the other, after the other to the horizon at 35 or 40,000 feet. And they're all as high as the Sierra Nevada. And in there, and if you've seen Iran from the air, there are whole areas that of missile bases, underground missile bases in those mountains that the Americans don't even know about. And the proof of that is that they're firing these missiles constantly every day. And something really chilling that's happening with it. Some people are saying, "Oh, look, they're not firing as many missiles. They're probably running out of missiles." So that's your hope. But the reality is even more awesome and like, oh my God, kind of awesome. Um, they were firing lots of missiles that were old so that those missiles would eat up all the anti-missile defenses of the Americans and the Israelis, which they have. Now, you'll sometimes still see some of the air, David Sling or the few remaining fads from the Americans and maybe the Iron Dome tossing up one or two. But they seem to have jammed that. Now a lot of those things are firing all at once and crashing into the towns. So the Iranians have some way to jam that now. And people in Israel are constantly in shelters with hardly, because all the FAD radars, multi-billion things, that's one of the first things the Iranians blinded with just cheap little $5,000 drones. The drone revolution of warfare has not, the Americans and the Israelis have not been keeping up with how, or not been watching the war in Ukraine and how military functions have completely changed. And I'm very concerned that a lot of really good American soldiers are going to find themselves literally dead by drone swarms. We're still going in. We don't have any anti-drone stuff going on. And I tell you, when they do war exercises on paper with this, um, it's a massacre because it's literally like getting hit by a swarm of locusts, but the locusts have 300 kilogram warheads on them, you know, and tanks go up, armored cars go up. I have spent the last 4 or 5 years watching thousands of hours of that kind of footage, watching what's going on in Ukraine with Ukrainian vehicles, Russian vehicles. They've had to completely change tactics. But if we're going to go in there all big and all American and look at us, and go in there, it's going to be look at boom, boom, boom. It's going to be a massacre. And I do think we're heading towards the greatest military disaster and defeat in American history. And if there's anything good I can pull out of it, uh, when you play bully long enough and get away with it, you just get more aggressive until somebody knocks you on your butt. And we've been asking for this for decades, and it's going to happen probably this April. Go ahead.
All right, we have a couple questions here, John. So you want to take them now?
Hmm.
Okay. So Don, you asked to speak, so you can unmute.
Hey, John, when you mentioned that the United States had it coming, do you see again in your this idea of this Zionism? It's essentially influencing the politicians and infiltrating, say, the U.S. government. So it's not the United States as the bully, as it's been a manipulation of the American people.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it, Don, because this is always the thing. Who is manipulating who in this relationship? I know that even some of the people that I really respect, like Brian Berletic, at least I'm hearing him right, he doesn't quite understand that he thinks, oh, America is always in control of Israel. But I don't know how he can say that with our Congress and our president being absolutely compromised by having entered a Trump number two government that is really, in reality, an Epstein regime. You know, all these people in our power circles in the United States. This guy Epstein did more to influence American history in a dark way by all the blackmailing that is going on. You know, Mossad, I think, runs America more than we do, even the CIA. And I can understand the reason. If you, my God, if you're well, this small little country, you rob some land in an ocean of 440 million Arabs and 92 million Persians, and you're just being a horse's ass about it for 82, 81, 82 years. It has one kind of positive side to it, but it's very toxic, is if you put yourself and declare yourself, this is our home, everybody get out, and 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 of course you're all going to unite because you've literally put yourself into a sea of people who don't like you. And so the other thing you will need is some big, dumb military supergiant to to do all the fighting for you. So the best way you go through that is you go to the Bible Belt. You go to a large part of the United States people are basically Christian nationalists. And I mean, I saw it since the early 70s during the Jesus freak movement that the whole I watched this evolution is, well, Israel's very important for for creating a situation that's Armageddon, which brings Jesus back. So I mean that's a pretty crude, quick way of putting the definition. I can go on and on about it, but I go on and on too much anyway. But really that's it. It's a very odd relationship because these Christian nationalists, Hegseth being one of them, half the people in the cabinet are these people. Half the people in the Congress are these people. They're really doing all this stuff because they are basically wanting to create Armageddon. There are a lot of our leaders and a lot, even in the army and the armed forces. There's a group that tries to help servicemen and women in the United States. And so what happens is, let's see, Larry Wilkerson is another great source of mine. Larry Wilkerson and also Daniel Davis, Colonel Daniel Davis, Deep Dive. That's another great source, everybody to check out. You know, he was in one of the final real combats in the Gulf War, and he was under the command of another great source of mine, Douglas McGregor, who was the commander of this armed force that fought the last battle with the Republican Iraqi Guards. That was really a land battle with tanks that the United States had ever directly been in. But anyway, they're kind of a place where you get servicemen and women, call them up and tell them what's going on, and that's illegal. But they don't want to lose their careers and stuff, and so these guys come in and make sure that these people are they're they're not going to be, their names are not going to happen. They go in and talk to the officials and the officers and say, hey, we're getting people from a certain unit that they're calling us, and their commander in chief that you have to respect and order, chain of command, is openly saying, well, this is not a war against Iran. This is a war for Jesus. This is a war so that Jesus will come back. I mean, that used to be sat on for decades, but no more. Now even generals, even high officers are talking crazy cult Christian nationalistic stuff. And the irony of it is that most of this interpretation of the book of Revelation all has really come about a century ago. It started a century ago. It's really a new cult. I mean, there were certainly people in 999 AD who were expecting the first millennium would end, so a lot of people stopped working and stopped paying their bills and stuff. And then when it didn't happen, it was a real mess, catastrophe across Europe. So this kind of happens. But frankly, there's also another group of people that say, and I'm actually one of them, I'm a preterist. I really can see where all the prophecies of the New Testament were fulfilled by 70 AD, and that the book of Revelations is really in code so that people would not be killed, Christians would not be martyred, because the whole thing starts. 2/3 of the book of Revelation is a talk of St. John to the seven churches, the first seven major church organizations of Christianity. And he was if you read that part, rather than get lost in the second last third of it, which is the book of Revelation, weird prophecies, he was making it very clear that this was about the near future, not about 2,000 years ahead. That there was that the whole thing that Jesus was talking about in the little apocalypse, the Mount of Olives sermon, when he took all of his disciples up to the mountain where you could see the great Jewish temple after they'd been there. And when they came out the front of it, one of the disciples, I forget which one, he said, "What a magnificent building this is." And it was. But then Jesus made, and I paraphrase, he said, this whole building is going to be destroyed in 3 days, and all the stones will be removed. And that's kind of a shocking prophecy. It happened. And he was trying to show that, but in 3 days, the Son of Man will rise, so he's talking about he was, the, not the temple, but his resurrection. And so they talked about it, and that's the only time that Jesus directly talked about the future and a reckoning of the apostasy of the church, and a crisis in faith that would happen. And I mean, I look at some of the stuff in Matthew 27 and a few of the other witnesses of his disciples that if you don't come into it with any preconditioned Sunday school dogma, if you just look at it like a little child, like Christ said, one should look at his words. Something in Matthew chapter 27 really makes me feel that all these people come when he comes back. They come and say, "Lord, Lord, we cast out demons, we helped people, we did all these things in your name." And he basically said, "I never knew you, you never knew me. Get thee hence, you evildoers." I'm paraphrasing, but that's the essence, the gist of it. Which kind of says that, all you Christians out there, are you aware that you pray to Jesus, but that name was never used by him? Never. He was away from this world when everybody got stuck into "in Jesus' name." So maybe what he was saying is, you're all praying to somebody I wasn't. My name was Yeshua, Joshua, if you want to westernize it a bit. In Jeshua's name. Try praying. I did for 21 days where I tried praying in Jeshua's name, not Jesus. That is not the name of your Son of God. It's not. I mean, and so you've been off for 2,000 years, off track. And so the apostasy is that. Now, another thing I want to say is to get to Don's question. This because it's a big question. It's a great question. I could go on for hours about it. It is, and I've written a lot about it. That the connection that is Judeo-Christian link up that we have in our country that is being, I would say, manipulated by politicians in Israel, who, understandably, if you've got this big, dumb, all belief and no getting into the reality guy, blind faith, dumb super giant who's going to literally fall on your enemies and crush them, and you just sit there and watch it go. Oh, I can understand. I'm part Jewish myself. I have some practical Jewish blood in me. I say, well, get the big dumb guy to go take care of Iran. You know, get the get him to take care of Iraq. Get our big dumb friend to do all the fighting and dying for us. And God help us if he ever wakes up to what we're doing, how we're manipulating him in the name of God and Jesus and all of that there. Okay, who's the next question now?
I know Don had another question here.
Okay,
Go ahead, Don. Don,
Dawn.
you there?
Dawn.
Don, we can't hear you.
Come back, Dawn.
All right. While we're waiting for Don,
Okay, Dawn.
there was a question that was typed in the chat here by Rick.
Okay.
Most Americans have no clue how they will be impacted economically, or psychologically. When, why, and how will Americans be impacted? How will they respond? Blame others or transform spiritually?
Well, probably all of the above. The question is, I mean, we anybody alive today remember the Great Depression? No, because they're all the people who knew about it are all basically dead now. And now we have never been in such an era of want. I mean, I think I know Rick, I think he's a baby boomer just like me. So we certainly have grown up most of our life when America was powerful, when we were building the roads where everybody used our dollar and we were growing, expanding, and people could buy a house and all of that. And that, of course, has been strained, and we've also deindustrialized. And you know, it's going to be impact. We're a country that's going to go into cold turkey. We've been addicted to so many bad habits, and now we've lost so much of our own power by being constitutionally illiterate citizens that now we've got this little country that has taken over our government and is leading us into the greatest military disaster in American history, which the good side of that in alchemy is that might wake a whole lot of people up in the United States. And look out, Zionists, when Americans wake up to what you've been doing, that Americans are responsible for allowing you to do to them. They're going to be really mad. And so I would say, what's going to happen to the Israelis once the American dumb brother gets a brain cell working and goes, hey, what have you been doing to me all this time? And so but Israel has its own problems because Israel as a state is probably not going to exist or survive this. There's going to be a second diaspora. I mean, if Trump makes good his threat to start taking down all the energy infrastructure, the Iranians have made it very clear. They say, you do that, and you compel us, because we have the escalation dominance. We will systematically take down all the power grids and destroy them across the Western Asia of our enemies. And those people in the Gulf who talk that like they're our friends, but they are using America's, our invaders, are the people who are trying to destroy our country, have been using their bases and to do it. And so the Iranians are taking all that down. And if you want to take out Iran's power grid out, Iran also said, and if you do this, we will take out all your water purification systems across the Gulf. That means 35 million Saudis requiring 80% of salt water turned into fresh water are going to have to leave Saudi Arabia or die of thirst. We're talking about the potential tens of millions of people in the Gulf dying from thirst. In a desert, it happens a lot faster than it does in a wet country. Or the survivors will have to run to other countries, and watch how Europe will get crowded with that. So, there's a lot of, it's going to be difficult. It's karma coming home to roost. If you've been addicted, you know how it is. The psychology of the addicted person is they're defensive. They don't want to hear what you're saying. And sometimes you have to let them go all the way to the bottom before they can get clean again. And America, in many different ways, is going to suffer that. In a way, what happened to the Soviet Union is about to happen to us. And it's been foreseen from very interesting seers that I've recorded down the years. When it was happening, when the Soviet Union was collapsing, Sture Johansson was channeling this Ambres spirit. And I don't usually, except for Casey and Sture Johansson, most of the others, Ramtha and all that, are just ego trips of the people that are channeling their own id. But these two were very accurate, extremely accurate. And so what he said was that that America would follow as a fallen colossi, as a fallen giant after the Soviet Union. We'd be next. And the victors of wars never learn from their victories. As soon as they've won and they're sitting back fat and sassy, the beginning of their corruption starts. It happened to us in 1991 when we were the undisputed king of the world. Atlas held all the spheres of influence, not knowing that if you don't learn from your victories, from the hubris that comes up from victory, you will not notice your feet becoming clay. And then when your feet crumble and you drop all the spheres suddenly, well, that's what happens when you don't learn. So now the Russians went through a decade called the Time of Troubles. It was named after a 60-year period, I think it was in the 1400s or 1500s, that where Russia lost half its population. It was almost destroyed. It was the Black Death. It also came in and killed a lot of people. And Russia had this terrible time where it was almost completely absorbed by the Lithuanian Polish Empire, which was its longest time occupier and invader of all the invaders that started from 800 years ago. Trying to invade Russia and break it up and utilize it. Well, the Russians' next worst downfall was in 1990 when the Soviet Union collapsed. It was a decade where it fell apart. The Russians just rushed into free marketing, not even knowing what it was, and literally took their whole socialist system and killed millions of people who built it, who are now in retirement. They said, oh no, let's privatize retirement funds. And what happened was it created the mafia oligarch system. And it was Vladimir Putin that began the end of it. The reason why people love Putin so much, even when they don't agree with his politics in Russia, which is a very rich and debating world of that, a lot more free than it is here, I know from firsthand experience, being in Russian television guests. Anyway, he got rid of the oligarchs. He said, you can keep your money, but stay out of politics. And then a few of them didn't, and he nailed them. He put them in jail, took all their money to these, because, Russia does have a mafia problem, so do we. One wonders which one is worse. I think the oligarchs that make their trillions in the military industrial complex have clearly showed us that all they're doing was making crap weapons at exceedingly expensive costs, because then they played with that in the stock market. They're just in it. They're not in it for the country. They're in it for the money. And they even put planned obsolescence in the F-35 and other highly expensive weapons, so that the whole cycle of a weapon, even after it's built and sent to the customer, will still need to go into the shop for them to make money fixing these planned obsolescent things they put into it. They're utter criminals. Frankly, they're traitors. You know, I I think the oath. I'll finish with that. With the next questions coming, I see. I think the oath takers of the Constitution, in our politicians, from presidents to other people working in government, we're also supposed to fight uh, enemies of the United States, both foreign and domestic. What's going on with the domestic invasion of our Congress? Now, I really feel like I'm living in an occupied country now, because the government is not listening to us. It's listening to another country. I understand why they did it, to survive, but it's treasonous what our leadership and our president are doing. This Miriam Adelson, an Israeli citizen, she even cornered her in public once and said, "Why don't you become an American citizen?" And she just remained silent. At least that was honest. She should be thrown out of this country. She has literally bought the president, her and her late husband. But it's good to see people are starting to get aware of this. And when this old debacle happens, it'll be very hard not to recognize what has happened. So go ahead now there's so much to say, but I want everybody to get a chance. Go ahead.
I think Don is back on the mic.
Don's back. Hi, Don.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hey, John, I have two questions. And my first question, the one thing I thought you might be interested in, are you familiar with the Blackstone Memorial?
Stimulate my memory. If it's in there, it'll.
I was just curious. It preceded the Balfour Declaration, and nobody really talks about it. I came across a book called Delusions of the Crowd by Bernstein, who mentions your argument, essentially that this group has been trying to push this narrative of a Armageddon in the Middle East that would give rise to whatever it is that they think is going to give rise to. And so 1890s, there was Lord Blackstone who proposed moving the Jews being persecuted in Russia to Palestine. So yes. Before the Balfour, there seemed to have been a movement, and it was being pushed also by this person as to who he's connected to and what it is. That's, I think, part of the problem, the group that he was connected to. He presented it to the Congress at that point in time, was mostly Protestant, and they rejected the idea and said, well, if you're going to give him a homeland, let's push this movement to Uganda. So there's been a push, even among the Christians. And my only point being here is, I think we have to be careful when we try to say Christian nationalism. I think what you're talking about is there are this Christian dispensationalist movement, which is not the majority of the people that represent American values.
Do you think the majority of people in Germany were Nazis? It's always a small group. Do you think the majority of Zionists are influencing the Jewish world? No, they're not.
No, I agree.
The Jewish world is against it.
I'm agreeing with most of you. The thing that frightens me a little bit is trying to find out this group, this say Zionism, and could it even that word itself is connected to Israel. And I think this group possibly might be using even Israel as a pawn to achieve some type of new construction of the world. And so when I look at, say, the ideology that we're facing, the ideology is this new world order of essentially this government, one world government, in which there is no sense of what you're talking, these constitutional rights.
Yeah, well, that's another thing that's definitely going on, Don, and that's a whole other story. I used to think globalism was good, and then I realize now that started realizing it when I started seeing this little debate club of 5 countries called the BRICS. I think it was turn of the century when I first became aware of them, and I started writing about them in the HogueProphecy.com articles in my archive. It's there, where I said, I don't know why, but this is going to be a whole new world order that's going to come out of these debaters. It's going to end up being a whole shift away from the West, a Eurasian, African, South American thing that will really bring leave leave countries alone to evolve in their own speed without any puritanical preaching from the United States or a toxic dollar, but break from both of them and let people alone to live with their sovereignty respected in a stable community of nations. And the odd thing is that the path to globalism is never going to lead to the things that it tried to say would happen. One world, and the government would just be like the post office and we'd all live that way. Even Osho used to talk about it this way. But I think to more clarify it is, I have an essay that's going to be in my book of essays, anthology on the future. And basically, one of the essays is called Beyond Democracy. And it will look at over the next next couple thousand years, or maybe the next millennium, hard to tell with timing, that we kind of think that democracy is the end all of political evolutions. It's just the beginning. It's just the beginning of something that will eventually lead to anarchia. I had to change the word, just like apocalypse scares people, anarchy scares people because it's been so misused by thugs and hooligans and people who just want to burn and tear everything down. That is not what anarchy means. So there are 5 or so major evolutions of politics. The first one is what we're suffering going into a big change about now. It is called, I call it mobocracy. We think we're democratic, but we haven't yet really learned how to be democratic. We've descended into mobocracy, mob rule, and that can only lead to a crisis of global fascism, which we're also entering. And these are the kind of people like the Davos people and all that are trying to create this kind of soulless fascist kind of world order. It won't succeed, but it'll cause a lot of upheaval. But what eventually is happening, and what I'm happy to say is, this war that's going on in the Middle East, in the Western Asia, is a direct attempt by people handling Trump of that nature to break the BRICS, because the BRICS is a real threat to globalists. And because it's like the whole world deciding, oh, we don't want to use your US dollar anymore because it's toxic. And so the US dollar is rapidly collapsing. So then, um, so gosh, so much involved in this. All I can say is I'm seeing now that the BRICS is the hope of the world, and Russia and China and are very much trying to give it a chance to grow. This war indirectly is about destroying the BRICS. Even Trump openly stated, he says, want to break up the BRICS. Well, if you wanted to break up the BRICS, the first thing you could do is announce that all sanctions on 2/3 of the world that you put on the dollar's use are gone. You might get them back with the US dollar doing that. But you are Trump, you and your leaders and your are creating the very end of your world order because you're not listening to what people, your own people even, you're not listening to what we want, what we need. And I guess it's got to, like the drug addict, he's got to end up, pissing himself in the street somewhere, waking up and going, what the hell have I done with my life? Maybe we have to go to an inch of our life doing this stupid stuff. And so it's not the way I'd like to see it, but
this idea of the United States being unique in history, in creating this constitutional republic. And I say, if you think that we're struggling, right, to reclaim sort of our right for self-rule, do you think the BRIC nations are the vehicles for ushering in this, again, experiment in self-rule, or do they become the vehicles to extinguish the experiment before we wake up? And then once we're gone, now it's an easy path towards putting in a one world government, this technocratic, feudalist system.
Well, not if you have a system where individual states are respected to go through their process of creating themselves and going through their ups and downs of it. I mean, one of the things that's helped this be so toxic is the intrusion of global powers for 500 years into other people's affairs.
Yeah.
And so what the BRICS is trying to do is end the intrusion. And America can join it too, if they may have to recover from their toxicity of being a global hegemon. The thing is that I never thought the path would be this way. But then again, back to my essay, what I'm seeing is you've got to go through this fascist time of troubles for the whole world. And then slowly after that, if we survive that, then a few hundred years from now, we might make the next big change, which is what's it called? Well, basically, we'll have a society that puts meditation, self-observation, self-responsibility in stages where those are in a mob rule becomes those who know rule. Meritocracy with meditation. Meritocracy without meditation is a benevolent fascism, which also ends up being fascist. But it's a situation is, do we just allow a pilot who never flew a jet to take us across the Atlantic Ocean? Do we just throw keys at our kids and say, go learn how to drive? There are stages where, I mean, frankly, the system that I'm talking about is that with meditation, it has to be balanced with meditation, is that you only can vote for a certain level of things if you have the knowledge and experience to do so. And the whole point is not to just let a few elites get in there, but it's to encourage and help people draw out their individuality, and it's a big essay, and I'll talk more about it and have it published in the next few years. It next goes to the next step after that is what I call dharmatocracy. That is where those who are enlightened rule. People who have come to their full love and radiance as an example to the rest of us become our elders, our community leaders. And then the final step in the distant future is anarchia. That is where the concept of anarchy in its true sense, just like apocalypse means enlightenment, lifting the veil, not doomsday, you have a world of only people. It'll take about 150 years for this truly Aquarian Age idea to really have gotten rid of all the centralization of the Piscean Age into what will be the Aquarian Age's idea, is that individual sovereignty. There are no countries when everyone's individually sovereign. So the whole idea of countries changes not from some group of people who want to overlord the world, but from people seeing democracy become more intimate and smaller and more intimate until there's a whole world of people that govern themselves through these evolution and meditation and consciousness with politics. You end up having a world where the those who can govern themselves are the perfect representatives of living in community. Only a community that is responsible, full of individuals that don't have to have rules. They live by their own rule of truth, and they understand they must live in community, communing. Now, I've had some direct experience of this experiment because I spent a lot of time in Osho's communes. And I took some interesting insights from that experience. And I can see down the line how that can be evolving into a completely different system, which governs itself far better than any government, because we reach the Aquarian dream of the only unit of country is an individual. Undivide you all. You know, in those days, if you got in a time machine and talked to them, you might ask from our time, how many nations are there in your world? It's so full of peace and radiance. And he said, nations? I look around to the others. Well, there haven't been nations for thousands of years here. Or you could say it this way. There are 1 billion of us on this planet now. You can call them the nations is each individual. It has become the sovereign individual. The atomic distillation from mass-mindedness, mob rule, will evolve over 150 years or so when we're totally in the Aquarian age, in this overlap of Piscean centralization, which wants to centralize a global order, when the reality in Aquarius is masses of people being individually sovereign, working together, which is a completely decentralizing concept. That's what we're undergoing in the next 150 years. Okay, go ahead with that.
All right, let me just interject really quick here. So Dr. O'Neill is a double Ph.D. He used to be on the board of Goldman Sachs. He's literally the guy that coined the BRICS. And one of his PhDs was on how oil can affect markets, especially in energy shocks. And he said that if the United States doesn't win this, then the BRICS will be more together. They'll be more aligned. And that there will be a change in global politics, global economics. But if the United States wins, it will destroy the BRICS.
It'll destroy the world.
And that's not what he said, but I
know.
see your point. I see your point. But the point here is that if the United States wins and it doesn't, quote, set the whole world on fire, which it might, I think there's a 30% chance of tactical nukes being used in the region.
It's imminent.
Yeah. So, but let's just
assume
tactical nukes are not used, and let's assume that the United States wins. All right, and that the theocratic regime falls, and that the secular society within Iran ends in some sort of constitutional republic or some sort of democracy.
That is never going to happen.
Yeah, but let me finish, John. Let me finish. So if this is what Dr. O'Neill said. If that does happen, what I just mentioned, it will destroy the BRICS, and they will not reconstitute. Because what's going to happen is that there's going to be a new alignment where the United States will now have more gravitas to defend the Pacific, and the Chinese will think twice in actually moving into Taiwan. And because of all this geopolitical maneuvering, it's going to crack the BRICS. Now, he's the one that literally coined it, from
Yeah,
Goldman
but he's
Sachs.
not a member of the BRICS.
No, but he's literally the one that
Those
packaged
people
it
made it happen.
while he was at Goldman Sachs to sell products
Yeah.
that were tied to an investment strategy and a global economic
Yeah.
quote
I think I know
system.
this guy now. I think
It's
I know
O'Neill,
what you're talking
Dr.
about.
O'Neill. But the thing here is that
Egg-headed
we're at a
fool.
fork in the road. We're at a fork in the road that if the United States loses, then we are probably going to move towards something that was very similar to what happened to the UK, and that is their empire starts to wane. They start to lose economic prosperity. They're no longer the big dog economically, and will be a declining empire. Now, how long that wanes, I don't know. Is it 50 years, 25 years? I think it
Well,
all.
like I was saying an hour ago, I think I was saying that I think we're going to have a variation on a theme what happened to the Soviet Union. We're going to go through a time of decade or maybe 2 decades of troubles, of losing the empire, having to, like Russia had to do, because basically in those 10 years, the Soviet economy, the Soviet industrial base was stripped. And it took 25 years for Vladimir Putin is the reason why Russia is now a great power and has never been wealthier and happier than it's ever been in its history. You wouldn't know that if you listened to all the if people in America would just look at some of the alternative media about them. I mean, I would just tell people, why just RT.com, Russia Today, is not been banned. It's still, if you type in RT.com on your search engine, you can watch Russian news. You can then open to, just try to find out what, I mean, Russia Today doesn't make any lies about it, unlike, Putin said basically, he said, look, we've got all these Anglo-Saxon narratives of kind of interpreting what the world's like. He said this. He said, we want to create something that will give our view of what the world is like. And so it's right open. It's not hiding. It's not trying to propagate or steal your mind or something. It's just like the BBC means the British Broadcasting Company, and it definitely was a narrative, an English British post-empire view of the world. Al Jazeera is a Gulf state Arabic point of view of the world. And when people go, oh, they're trying to make me into a Muslim. No, it's not that. They're right up front with it. Yeah, this is the Russian view of the world. You might come into our filter and see if it opens some things you've never thought about before. I mean, I would be all fine if Americans would just say that, but and we're going to give you an American view of the world, but the American view we're giving, the world doesn't want. It used to. Boy, everybody wanted to be American. And that's all. I've lived long enough to see that go. So I think it would be one of the easiest prophecies I could ever make about this this guy who coined the phrase BRICS. Um, it'll never happen because I can see, as you well define how I think I know who this is. He doesn't look at his American ingrained assumptions, as most Americans don't. Even a lot of really brilliant intellectual Americans just don't get it. Um, and there's no way that he's going to see actually the end of all that coming, just like if he was some great thinker at the end of the Soviet Socialist republics, trying to think how if we did perestroika and glasnost and made that all work and revive the Soviet Union and be a good socialist country. That didn't happen. But what happened is all that crap had to go down, and Soviets had all that crap go down, and the country almost died. Millions that were retired died. because they took all the money and privatized it and just left them. And lots of them were murdered by the mafia. Oh, we got these people in the apartment don't want us to take their pensions away, so they go in and kill them all. It was terrible. It was terrible. But if you see the way Russia is now, they came out of that dark place, and I'm hopeful because that the United States, and it will go through this. And I live here, so God knows what's going to happen to old me if some mafia guy comes through the door and says we want this apartment. you know, so I'm not outside of this looking at it. I'm in the middle of it, as so many Americans are. And the way Russia got itself out of it, I would hope that we would learn something from that. Our models don't work. It's time for us. The thing that is the biggest hope I've had about America throughout its existence is that when there comes every kind of around the time of Saturn's return, because Saturn rules truth over delusion. Saturn limits delusion. So when it comes into a full circle return into one of the 12 houses of the zodiac, we've had this cycle. I used to write about it in the 90s, where we have this cycle that we redefine what it is to be an American. I'll give you an example. Civil War, horrible experience, but necessary that we had to pass through. John Brown was right. Absolutely right. One of the greatest prophets, never got a prophecy wrong. John Brown was absolutely right about us. That we had to go, he didn't want it to be right, but he had to take it up and say, look, we're going to have an ocean of blood. And the North and the South all have to pay the price of the sacrifice of this Civil War. And it got done. And then America redefined itself. And for better or worse, it started to expand and grow, and people started coming west. And so in 20-year cycles, you'll find that, like in the 1920s, there was another Saturn return, but we didn't reinvent ourselves. We just kind of went on with it, and then we fell into the Depression. And then 20 years later, in the 40s into the 50s, we were ready to redefine ourselves again and redefine what it is to be Americans. We have to get this one last sentence. Thanks. We have to go to a point where this whole thing we've become has to be over and done with, and redefine ourselves as Americans.
Right. All right. So let me just unmute here. Don had a follow-up question. Don, go ahead. Hello, Don.
Don.
Oh, there you go. I was just got unmuted. So one thing that you mentioned about can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear you.
Okay. So you were mentioning again, and I agree with you. I think I followed Martin Armstrong and what he talked about with the Bank of New York, Frank Safra, working with Berezovsky and so forth, to try to take over the Russian resources. And as to who was involved with that, I'm not going to go into it. But it seems to be the same forces. Even in the Civil War, you're going to find, to follow the money, who financed both sides of the war. And it was in Lincoln, in my opinion. Again, this is the problem you have with history. And I appreciate everything you spoke in the history, like huge depth of knowledge. But you start to see a common theme of someone who steers humanity in a way to move to basically have us in these endless conflicts. And so the question of us coming together to try to redefine society around some type of metaphysical aspect, I'm not too sure how you get there if you don't ever identify who continues to steer the conversation and move us into these narratives, constructed narratives, that don't connect us sort of, I think, with your sort of your divine connection to something that what I would say is, what you mentioned, sovereignty, the individual sovereignty. And I say that one of the biggest concerns I have is the technology is advancing in a way that we could end up enslaving ourselves, so to speak, if we aren't understanding who it is that's creating this technology. As we sit here trying to move back into sort of say moving into you were mentioning that we do more breathing and so forth. If we're not aware of where the technologists are going, we saw it with the COVID lockdowns, the digital IDs and so forth. Yeah. There's how do you stop the technology, the people that control the technology? What is steering them? Who is steering them? And are we even going to have a chance to even try to have sovereignty, or are they going to end up controlling things?
Well, basically, the only thing that one's empowered to do is, oh boy, this is a big question. A lot of ways to go into it. There will always be the parasitical side of the human condition. These people are parasites. They live off people, even live off their souls with dogmatic interpretations of religion to keep them under control. What you're talking about with artificial intelligence, back in 1990, I was writing things for a book on this, and one of the subjects I wanted to get into was the danger of artificial enlightenment. That's what I called AI. This idea that if you create a world where your machines give you an artificial enlightenment, then that civilization is doomed. It will fall apart because it has lost its soul. It is trying to, as a creator of machines, trying to become one. Now I call it the Dr. Frankenstein syndrome. And I've said that, the three big dangers of our future existence is I'll start with the least and go to the worst. Nuclear war is the least dangerous. We might be able to survive that. It'll take a long time to get back to civilization, but we might be able to survive that as a species. The mass extinction, otherwise known as global warming, our own version of the heating up the world that happened in the Permian extinction and the Pedum margin between the Cenozoic and some of the other later mammal eras, geologic eras. So yeah, that's a big one. We're going to be spending thousands of years trying to stay ahead of that, because if we magically waved a wand and stopped all the gases that are creating global warming from releasing into the world and the atmosphere and the oceans, we are still seeing in the next hundreds of years a 130-foot rise of the oceans across this planet. It's going to, just look at the ocean if you're by the sea and calculate how high, like where I'm living in my village of Langley, I'm 130 feet above the ocean below me and the cliff. It's going to be, the waves are going to be splashing on whatever's standing here in hundreds of years. So it's a huge change. Now it's gradual, but we can't stop that from happening. We've baked too much into the system. But these are things we can survive. The one that really is the most dangerous is artificial idiocy. And it comes simply, and put it as atomically as I can, what human beings need to understand is they think they're alive, they dream of being alive, but they are not alive. They are stuck in a presumption because of the conditioning that we go through, which is not there to educate. Educate means to draw out this mystery of divineness that every child brings in as a gift to the world. And what do? We well-meaningly, our priests, politicians, parents, and pedagogues all try to help us cope by living in this world of dialectics. And in the process, they help us in a game of forgetting that we're Buddhas. Oh, do the game Buddha pretending not to be a Buddha. And then the kid is perfect, innocent, open, and trusting. And so he does the game, he wins, he forgets he's a Buddha, he forgets it's a game. And then that then creates a situation. So the thing that people have to confront, that Gurdjieff, one of the great mystics of the 20th century, really brought to the forefront, and my own master Osho did too. You fundamentally got to understand that you are a machine. You came in a living being, and now you are a machine, an organic machine. And that is why you're so enamored with being able to create unorganic, inorganic representations of yourself as robots and things, because so people need to work on first becoming human. And it's quite a job. I don't know if we'll make it. In fact, it's something that can't actually be done collectively. Now, the message can be given collectively thanks to our communications, but really, the real transformation that I experience in my own life has to be one individual at a time. But if you're in a state of timelessness, which I'm talking about, it's in everybody. You're already a Buddha. You're already a Christ consciousness, pretending not to be. And the ultimate pretending is where you pretend because you're a pretense, not really alive like you were meant to be. Just 1/10 conscious, and the 9/10 of us is unconscious and motivated to do unconscious things like mind amplify the world rather than the heart to be amplified in this world. Put the mind in the center of our lives rather than the heart. The heart is the steering wheel to the body-mind vehicle that we inhabit in this visit on Earth. The mind's the brake. The society's upside down. It wants the mind to be the master, so we're braking all the time. Because minds stop and start, stop and start, stop and start. Nothing wrong with the mind, but it's a terrible, terrible master. It should be our servant. Turned on when we need it, turned off when it's not. And that's why my fundamental teaching is, at least what I can contribute to, is you're understandably, you have been throwing me wonderful Gordian knots to untangle. And I appreciate it. It's an important Gordian knot to cut apart. But I'm talking about something Zen, something that, like Alexander did, he had all these kings came to try to untangle this knot in Anatolia somewhere when he was in his early conquests of the Persian Empire. And he just took a look, he looked at the knot, pulled out his sword and went chunk and cut it in two, and all the tangles fell apart. And he said, done. Because he was saying only a world conqueror can untangle these things. Well, genius does not follow the ordinary path. Genius always arises out of spontaneity. We are all suppressed geniuses. We were born with innocent spontaneity of genius. But to get along in this world, you have to turn yourself into another drone. You can be a Christian drone, an atheist drone. You have to be a machine. And unfortunately, human beings have to confront first that they are not alive. Their life has been stymied. We are zombies. It's no wonder we have a fascination about zombies, because we are zombies. We are not living the way we were meant to be live, radiant in Christ consciousness or Buddhahood. And so my contribution to this is to try to look at the world, but I'm often in my writings and in my shows, like right now, I always come back to this atomic issue. First, you have to look in the mirror and see you as you are and as you go. This body, mind, ego, personality. And what sees it is not that ego, mind, personality. What sees it only happens in no time. It's here now, forever. And it is the very God spark that is in every person that almost no one alive today in the world is even aware is there because it's so ordinary. It's all godliness. And it's not just some, oh, it's all godliness, like something very Californian. I grew up in California, so I can say that. Just, oh, well, I'm just living in the moment. Why rob a bank or something? No, so the real fundamental issue is consciousness in you, the individual becoming the undivide you all. Now, that also has problems. A lot of the handful of people have been trying to teach us about this, including my master, got killed. My master was poisoned by the U.S. government when he was in jail for immigration fraud, arrested by a warrant that wasn't signed. And then they moved him all around in different places so that we would lose contact with him. And that's when they gave him thallium in a sandwich. After they tried to put him in a jail with this lovely guy that was in there. I said, "Oh, Osho, I see you on the TV. Oh, I gotta tell you, if they've stuck you in here, I'm dying of terminal herpes, so they want you to catch herpes. So just keep pounding that door until they open it and take you somewhere else." Because all the convicts and stuff were seeing them we were on all the main news networks every day in 1984 and 1985. The whole world watched us for about 15 minutes on the national news and international news every day. It's all forgotten now. We were the big show. And so everybody in the prison knew is, "Oh, Bhagwan, how you doing, man? Hey, what do they do?" And they all were trying to help him. So they gave him it's a CIA thing of choice. It's heavy metals, thallium, and it kind of exacerbates your health problems so that they can say, "Oh, he had heart disease," you know. But there was enough signs and you don't start looking for it until it's already mostly passed out of your body and very hard to detect. It's done all its damage. But yeah, I mean, and there I was in front of his burning gad, watching him burn in India all night. So I, until my last breath, I'll try to share what I know and try to convey it and translate it into the difficulties of living in our zombie state. But in the end, any good zombie, when he makes love, says, "Thanks for the tip." Just came out. Gotta be humor. It's sacred, folks. Laugh your way all the way to Armageddon. Laugh Armageddon off the map.
Well, we've actually had quite a bit. We've had a good showing tonight, and a lot of back and forth in the chat amongst.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for.
I like seeing individuals talking to each other in the chat. That's really important, and also, the good feedback that we're getting with the questions. We are in tumultuous times, and there's no, this is going to affect everybody. And it's not, and it's not 10 years down the road. It's
now.
Tomorrow.
It's on our doorstep knocking.
Yeah. So
April, you will see a lot of it hit the fan in April through mid-May. If you think it's been a wild ride, it's just starting. And then it could be 2-year period coming because of Saturn being in its fall in Aries. It's going to start with a bang with all these other planets. Mars, god of war, Neptune, the unconscious, meeting the conscious in mass messaging. Neptune, the mind's message to us. Saturn, who is a terrible tyrant because it limits your illusions. But if you're not into illusion, if you want to see your truth, Saturn's your greatest friend. So the fires of purification, all in Aries, are creating this thing. Now, the lowest level of vibratory Aries is war, and this is the war season. That's why March is literally where we get the word March, because ancient peoples used to start their wars, especially in the Mediterranean and Western Asian early cultures, in a time when the weather was good, winter was over, March into April, and now you can march around, kill your fellow man, and rape your fellow men and women, and this is an ancient bad habit, but it also has a force of destruction that also leaves the way for creation. A lot of things are going to begin in the next few weeks that will redefine all of your lives and the whole world. And, there will be travails, but with time, it's like, you have a big forest fire. It's a big tragedy for the forest of that moment, but then the new forest grows. That takes time.
All right, we're at the end of the show here, but before we close out, I want to remind the audience in the chat, not in the chat, in the description of this video, there's a link. There's also a link in the chat to go to John's website. Click that link. Please sign up for a periodical or a reading. It helps John out. He's doing, these shows to inform the public, and it would be nice if you can help him. So, John, if you could just quickly discuss, what the periodicals are, what the readings are, so individuals can click that link and go to your website.
Just imagine what it would be like if you had a reading with me and it's you and me in the same window talking to each other, and I'm looking at you. And imagine all this energy that's coming out of me spontaneously. Imagine what it'd be like to have that go for a couple hours, just you and me. So if you feel or resonate with that, because we can go down all kinds of amazing rabbit holes and come up with some very interesting insights. I do. If you do the thing, there's a little link on the Hogue Prophecy page that says right at the top, get a reading from John Hogue, and what'll happen is there'll be a link that you click, and it's to an email that I get on my email that I use for the wide open. Like, I don't have any suppression of anything coming through, because a lot of times these robots in the computers decide for me who to censor, and I don't even know about it. So I have this one website where the whole world can come in. It's a lot of junk to clear out every morning, and I will see it, and all you have to do is put Hogue reading in the subject line, which I'll see out of all the thousands of emails, and then I will get in contact with you through that email, and then give you the how to do the PayPal payment or a snail mail payment, how to it'll be all self-instructing, and what times are available and all that, and then we'll set up a date and do this. These readings can be 2.5 hours. So we go deep, but the amazing thing is, and it's this weird thing that happens in these readings. I don't know why it's happening, but there's something happens that we might have even felt it with this interview. Wasn't that a fast few hours? It just went by like, whoosh. Well, in the readings, they even go faster. There's a little timer, and it passes each 40 minutes, and it's really 40 minutes, but it's coming like it's only like 1 minute going by. And yet so much happens. Time stops in these readings, as it sometimes does in these interviews. And so I don't know why it happens, but it's a lot of fun for us to go on this ride. So yeah, that's one thing that can really help me, and also help you with some of my experiences and all. I've had a lot of people really love the readings. They're lots of fun. And the other thing is, I literally financially survive to keep doing this work through my Hogue Prophecy reports. And you can really help me and get all these great insights by joining it, especially now. I mean, things I've been writing about and predicting since 1990, since 1987, it's happening now with great accuracy, the potentials, good and bad. So, if for just you can do it two ways. You can see a free sample of what's out there right now. What's out there is what I did in February. I will soon have my March version. Well, actually, it's what I did in January. I've been so busy with this war, I can't even catch up to putting things on the Hogue Prophecy Bulletin. But if you go there, scroll down, and you'll find the join options. The two options are this. You donate $60 through the link that's there, and it takes you from my Hogue Prophecy page. It's an HTTP, but it's not dangerous. There's no problems if you have an overactive computer spam thing. It's nothing's ever happened for 25 years on this thing with the HTTP. But if you don't want to do HTTP, you can send me a snail mail, and so it's all safe. Well, either way you want to do it. $60 for an entire year, or you can join in the page in PayPal. You can learn how to do an automatic payment per month if you just want to pay $5 or $10 or $20 a month. Then that's great. So this is going to be a remarkable. What I'll do is I will send any new subscriber what I did in February, which really sets it up, because what I did is reviewed 43 years of distilled examples of how I predicted this U.S.-Israeli war with Iran, starting all the way back to 1987. So it even shocks me when I went through it all. So that is a great foundation to see what I'm already editing it, final editing it right now. This one that I'm doing for the Apoc April lips, Apoca April lips, and which is going to be quite amazing, frightening, and it's going to be full spectrum. So, and God knows, in 2 weeks, when we do this again, it'll be a whole different thing happening. And then I think the other 2 weeks, I calculated this, Paul. I was looking on my situation chart over here, and I put a note down because there's an interesting development that Russia is wanting to diplomatically behind the scenes get into this thing and maybe get an agreement. And if this is so, this would be another example how Edgar Cayce was absolutely right about the Russia after Bolshevism. He said, then what of Russia? Russia is the hope of the world. And why he said that is because of the incredible natural soulfulness of the Russian people. And Russian people includes 190 ethnic groups that all have the freedom to live and worship the way they want. And in Russia, I've seen it. I mean, best if you want to test that assumption, go and watch Ellie from Russia, this redhead gal, Aries, redhead explorer. She's really good documentarian. And she's been trying, when everything got closed and Russia kind of got cut off from the Western world and all, she started to say, well, God, I've got 11 time zones that I'm living in. So she's literally about 10 provinces away from going to every oblast, every independent federation stuff in Russia. And she's been an amazing educator, and she's lots of fun. And she's got a great sense of humor. And she's been this wonderful educator for me to really see all this rich ethnic diversity in Russia, amazing cultures, and all really feeling, yeah, well, we're all part of this. It's a federation, you know. So if ever there was a country that has in itself a lot of individual sovereign nation provinces that are getting along with each other, I mean, Russia's got one of the largest Muslim populations in any Christian country, and they're getting along just fine. And these are the same people that were having a war in the 1990s and early 2000s with Chechnya that I thought that's never going to end. It's terrible. They turned it around. Now the Chechens love being in Russia. They are at the cutting, a lot of their warriors at the cutting edge of this war. They're fighting with fascism in Ukraine. You probably won't hear people call it that, but it is. That's why the Russians are fighting it. So anyway, um, I'm the other thing to take from me gladly is the gift that I give you in these articles. I share all my sources. And if you go in, if I'm a doorway for you to go into all of my great sources, then you can go to their place and then you will get into their sources and so far. And that's a way that I have become somebody with my eyes open and my heart open to mostly what's really going on in the world. So I contend. Don't believe it, test it. Become a member of the Hogue Prophecy Report. And thank you, whatever you do. Thank you for this night and for spending your precious time with us.
And we're going to be doing this in another 2 weeks. And I suspect there's going to be a lot that happens between those 2 weeks. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Make sure that you share the links. Click the like button. We'd like to grow this show, so please help out. We'd greatly appreciate it.
And share it with everybody, all your friends. Say, check this show out. Send them the link.
Right. And participate. Ask questions.
Yeah. I love getting your questions. It's more fun than me just blabbing here. I love your questions. I love it. They inspire me.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining. And before we close it out, John, say goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye to everybody.
All right. Everybody, good night.